Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining our panel today. Our panel is titled The Making of a Small, Smart City. It's a very interesting panel. We have a diverse set of participants who are going to talk about the topic from a lot of different perspectives, give you a lot of good insight. Starting with Mayor Eugene W Grant. He is the mayor of Seat Pleasant, Maryland, a smart city of excellence and the world's first authentic small smart city. Mr. Grant will talk about, from a CEO's perspective, what it takes to become a smart city, the type of vision you need to have, and what you need to do to foster a culture that is conducive to digital transformation. Mr. Scott Bynum will talk about how they're using technology from in a smaller organization to better deliver services. So he'll talk a little bit more from the day-to-day activities of a smart organization or a smart city. And then we'll finish up with Mr. Joseph Kammerman, who is the Vice President for Project Implementation and Management at Priority 5 Holdings, who will tie together the two presentations since both Mr. Grant's city and Mr. Bynum's police department leverage the same software solutions for their respective organizations. So without further ado, I'd like to hand it over to Mayor Eugene W. Grant. Can you please tell us a little bit about yourself and about Seat Pleasant?
Yes, thank you, Mohammed, and to my co-panelists, thank you as well for joining us this great day. And we thank the sponsors and the host, the Smart Cities Week, for putting together this great conference virtually. It seems like our life is changing in the virtual world, and we're becoming adjusted to that new paradigm that we are experiencing these days. But as was mentioned, my name is Eugene W. Grant, and I serve as the 12th mayor of Seat Pleasant, Maryland. And I just was reelected to my 5th term in office, serving as the longest serving mayor in the history of our city. Our city was incorporated in 1931. We are right outside of Washington, D.C., our nation's capital, as you see on the screen before you. We have a population of a little bit under 5,000 wonderful residents who give us no problems whatsoever. We are about 0.75 square miles, so we're a very small community. And our zip code is the 20743 zip code area. We are a transit-oriented community, so we have access to 2 metro stations that are right outside of our city, so it's a walkable community, and we're in the phase of redeveloping our city and taking as a platform of smart city services to make that happen. We found that in the past, when the city was going through some challenging times economically, particularly in 2008, when the world financial markets crashed, we had to find new ways in which to deliver services. So just because the financial markets crashed, that doesn't mean that citizens still don't have an expectation of their government providing services for them. The other thing we had to look at as well is taxes. You cannot continuously tax your people to death. You cannot keep finding ways to bring in revenues through taxes only. You have to be creative, you have to be innovative. The services that we provide cost the government money, so if you want police officers and you want gas in their car, that costs money. Gas prices go up. But at the same time, I can't keep taxing the citizens to provide that service. So we have to find ways in which we are more efficient, that we're more effective with the resources that we have, being better stewards of the taxpayer dollars, but at the same time, finding other ways in which to attract and magnetize financial resources into our city. And so we saw a few years back through the introduction of a representative of IBM, the concept of smart cities. I had heard about it, but really didn't know anything about it. This is probably in 2012, somewhere thereabouts, when I first heard about this concept. And then I had continuous conversations about it. To accelerate the conversation today, in 2016, we began our journey to turn our city into a smart city with an innovation village. And we have just been very successful in our efforts. In 2017, we signed a large agreement kicking off our $30 million goal of creating the smart city for Seat Pleasant, Maryland in April of 2017. August of 2017, we launched our platform for our smart cities, where all of the IoTs and all of that data goes into a central hub for our government to be able to utilize that data to make decisions on behalf of our citizens and residents of Seat Pleasant. And so the rest is history. We have gone through the peaks and gone through the valleys. We've gone through the good and we've gone through the not so good moments in making this digital transformation work for our residents. But by and large, most of our residents are happy. I guess that's why they elected me for a 5-term, because I guess they feel as though that we're going in the right direction. And what is the right direction? The right direction is to ensure that whatever we do as a government, we are serving the people. The people must be first. We are here not to serve ourselves, but we are here to serve the constituency of our local jurisdiction. And if we do that, I think that we're doing what is right. The Constitution is very clear, we the people, that preamble. Those 3 words, I think, are enshrined into our hearts and into our minds. And as we work towards creating a more perfect union, the people must be the first and foremost in everything that we do. And I think Smart City is the new social justice platform that helps us to achieve that end.
Thank you, Mayor Grant. And I've actually had the pleasure of working with Mayor Grant and the city of Seat Pleasant for the last about 3.5 years during their digital transformation. And one of the things that I've noticed in every meeting I've attended with Mayor Grant, there's always been an empty chair representing the citizen seat at the table. So just to expand on the point you just made, can you tell us about why you do this and how that has influenced the vision for Seat Pleasant?
Yeah, so I think that those who kind of know me very well know that I'm a Jeff Bezos fan. I like his business model. I like some of his philosophy and his approaches. And hey, who am I to debate with the world's richest man? I mean, you don't get to be the richest man and not doing something right. But he obviously did something right. So creating Amazon and the platform that Amazon created is this customer-obsessed company is what he's created, a customer-centric company. And I think that when you keep the customer at the forefront, if you make certain that everything that you do is centered around them, then I think that you become successful. And obviously, Amazon has proven through that model that they've been very successful in ensuring that they look out for their customers. So we've adopted, if you will, that same philosophy. Jeff Bezos also, when he has his meetings, he always has an empty chair in his meeting that represents the customer. So we've done the exact same thing. They say that taking someone's idea is a great form of flattery. So we have taken that idea and incorporated in what we do. So all of our meetings, we have an empty chair with a tag that says citizen. And so whenever we have a discussion, whenever there is an intense fellowship, if you will, in those discussions, we tell people to look at that chair and say, how does your idea represent the best interests of the people who occupy that chair there? And so that helps us to keep our focus, to get the focus off of ourselves, to get the focus off of our egos, to think that we have all the answers. I don't have all the answers. None of us have all the answers. But if we continue to look at that empty chair to say, we are working for them. We are working for the citizens. We are working for the taxpayer. We are working for our bosses. That's who we work for. And so that whatever we do, we want to make our bosses happy. We want them to be pleased with our services. We want them to be pleased with our product, our outcomes and our outputs. That's what we want from our citizens. So by creating this citizen-obsessed, citizen-centric government, keeping the citizen at for. And again, we're keeping, again, what is enshrined in the Constitution, we the people. It's all about the people of our communities.
Thank you, Mayor Grant. Thank you very much. Obviously, the goal of a smart city is to improve the lives of your citizens. So it's great to hear that Seat Pleasant is citizen obsessed in its smart city transformation. And one way to do so is to use technology in the city. Can you tell us a little bit about what makes Seat Pleasant an authentic small smart city?
Yes. One of the things that we have talked about over the past few years, traveling all over the United States as well as all over the world, we hear a lot of people say that they're smart cities. And not to disrespect or put anybody else down, but we really question whether or not authentically if they really are. What we're saying that what really makes a true, authentic smart city is a shared service hub. If you don't have a shared service hub, you're actually not really a smart city. You're just a city with some cool gadgets and some technology, and that's wonderful. I'm not knocking that. So those in the listening off the audience that are attending this conference virtually, I'm not knocking you at all, and I applaud you for that step. But to really define what makes you an authentic smart city is the fact that you have a shared service hub where all of the data that you are bringing in is going into a centralized area that for us in government, me and Scott, those of us in government, our desire is to make certain that all of our colleagues have access to the same data, as long as it's not confidential, all of the same data to help us drive our decision. Data drives the decision. It's not my opinion, it's not Scott's opinion, but it is what the data dictates. If the data says that we have a crime problem in one area of the city, then we deploy resources in that area of the city because the data told me and Scott to do that, and not because me and Scott just want to put police services in that area. And so that becomes critically important. But going beyond just our staff is as well as the community also. And so we've seen examples out in California, Palo Alto, California, where they gave residents access to data, and they were able to utilize that data to come up with methods to assist the visually impaired to cross the street. Utilizing that data to come up with new innovations, and that's what we want. That's what makes America what a great country, is the fact that we are the land of the free and the home of the brave. We're free to exercise our talent in unique ways. We're brave enough and bold enough to bring those to the marketplace. And so that is a way in which we are able to improve the quality of life of the American citizen here in this great country in which we live. And so that shared service hub model becomes critically important. Why is it important? Because it also becomes the great equalizer. Everyone has access to that same data. So if we have access to that data, we can extract that data, we can synthesize, analyze it, synthesize that data, and come out with some products for the betterment of our individual lives, the better lives of our collective lives, and again, continuously make a great country. So the shared service hub, I can't stress that enough, is the most important component in a smart city. If you don't have it, you need to get it. You need to be in a position where all of the data is coming into one centralized location, and then that data is shared with universities in your community, with the business community, with residents, as well as members of your government.
Thank you so much, Mayor Grant, and I couldn't agree more. Over our last 3 years, we've implemented the shared service hub in Seat Pleasant. We've coined it the Triple C, but the shared services hub is actually powered by Priority 5's platforms and technologies. In Port Fourchon, the Harbor Police are also using Priority 5's platform in a slightly different way to manage their operations and emergencies. Mr. Bynum, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and Port Fourchon, please?
Yes, sir. Good morning. I'm Scott Bynum. I've been in law enforcement for roughly 20 years. I'm currently the Homeland Security Specialist for Port Fourchon Harbor Police. My primary focus area is to assist the Chief of Police with researching new technologies, planning and implementing security technologies for Port Fourchon. and advise on some general homeland security programs and policies related to port security. Port Fourchon is probably the most centralized port in the Gulf of Mexico. We service about 99% of all the Gulf oil activities in the port. One of our biggest customers is Loop, which is a private deep water oil port, which we're able to share P5 with them and with their operations. We use P5 on a daily operation. I'm using it right now to track the upcoming storm that we would get ready to receive tomorrow. And that's the gist of things. As far as like Port Fourchon, we got probably over 200 customers and tenants that I use to track their assets with the local government. So we have several local governments that's on the platform P5 with us that monitor on a daily operation. So I use this system pretty much every day for all the activities of the port.
Thank you, Mr. Bynum. Mayor Grant earlier mentioned that breaking down the silos and sharing information across departments is really important for the quality of services we provide to citizens. In emergency situations, we know the free flow information is extremely critical. Can you tell us how you're ensuring interoperability between private and public sector during emergencies at the port?
Yeah, so we use P5 in a number of ways. One of the unique things about P5 that I like, you can set data sets. So when we manage in storms like this upcoming hurricane and we start sharing data with our port tenants, I can set the sets that allows the port tenants to see port-related activities, but I can separate government-related activities on the same side. So I can set the data set to where if it's sensitive information, only the government can see it, and things that pertain directly to the port, the port tenants can see it. So as we evacuate in our port, we're allowed to do certain things with our assets that allows the government and the private parties of the port to see who's been evacuated, who's still on site, who we got to go contact to evacuate, which gives everybody within the parish a common picture. So our parish government monitors the activity as well. Our local sheriff's office monitors the same activity as well. And we also have our local fire departments on the system as well that can monitor exactly what we're doing in Port Fourchon from different locations, but still have the same picture of what's going on, what's taking place at the same time.
Thank you, Mr. Bynum. When we talked prior to doing this panel, you mentioned several times that if you have an open mind, you can use the solution to do a lot more than just managing incidents or emergencies. Can you talk a little bit more about some of the ways you've used technology in your day-to-day activities?
Yes, sir. So currently I'm working on two projects. One project is the Port Commission also owns a small scale airport. So I'm currently building that airport in P5 that allows me to track all assets. And whenever I say track assets, it allows me to do consequence analysis. So if we have a set of runway lights that's controlled by one certain panel, it allows me to link those lights to that panel. That if we have any problems with those runway lights, it automatically gives me a solution to go to this panel to start looking for issues with the airport. If we monitor our fuel tank levels, we monitor all incoming and outgoing flights into the airport. And so anytime something changes with that asset, it allows me to change. So we have a light that's down, I can change that light has been down. It'll tell me date and time that light went down, and it'll give me date and time that light has came back up on the runway. I also use it with a private partner called Energy. So every light that's in the jurisdiction of the port, that's controlled by Energy, I have every light as an asset, and as soon as that light goes down, Energy has access to P5, the person that's in charge of all the lighting systems, and they can actually go in on a daily basis and see every light that we put non-functional, and then when they fix that light, repair that light, they come back and change it as functional. We can see it on our end automatically. So it kind of alleviates a bunch of phone calls and what's going on. We can actually see it live time. Whenever we put it offline, they can see it. Whenever they put it back online, we can see it. We also I use it to manage all port assets. And with the port asset management, the fire department also comes in and manages. So when the fire department goes on site and they do their site assessment of the facility, and they start putting in their tier 2 reports, which is kind of chemical manifest of what chemicals on their property. When they enter into the system, I'll automatically see what they entered, and in return, what I put into the system for the asset, they can see what I entered. So that's how we've been kind of using it to bring in daily operations of multiple agencies amongst our jurisdictional area.
Thank you, Mr. Bynum. Thank you very much.
We also bring in our CAD feeds. When I say CAD, that's a local dispatching of all police-related calls within the parish. So we bring in those CAD feeds as well, and I can monitor on the map of every CAD call, and you can set them as low priority, medium priority, high priority alerts, and it'll give me alerts for every CAD call within the parish that the sheriff's office is responding to, geolocated on the map as well.
Thank you, Mr. Bynum. I know during our work in Seat Pleasant and during our conversation with you, Mr. Bynum, we talked a lot about how the Priority 5 platform and our shared services hub enables us to incorporate a lot of programs and a lot of data sets. One thing we're also doing is bringing in the different crime data and CAD feeds into our systems as well, so we can see what's happening holistically in the area, not just Seat Pleasant. So again, in emergency situations that you handle and deal with on a periodic basis, the importance of that, being able to bring all data together, giving everybody a common operating picture of what's going on. So definitely thank you for that, and I appreciate what you're doing. Mr. Joe Cameraman, can you please tell us a little bit about yourself, Priority 5, and how your solutions are enabling not just smart cities, but ports and organizations as well?
Thanks, Mohammed. Thanks, Scott. Thank you, Mayor. Good morning to everybody. Really appreciate the time today. My name is Joe Cameraman. I've been with Priority 5 for about 12 years. I've been in emergency management, transportation, and in the software industry for about 20 years. I can't believe I'm getting that old, but I've been doing this for quite some time. I also I got my degree in urban planning from Texas State University down in Texas, and my Master's of Science in Emergency Management from George Washington University. Really want to, first of all, appreciate the Mayor and Scott for being here today, talking about their solutions, talking about just the challenge as it relates to bringing technology into the workflow for city government. Oh, sorry about that. We here at Priority 5, we recognize the challenge, we recognize the issues that come with bringing technology, and how having a ton of technology doesn't always solve the problem, because it sometimes creates more problems, because, as the Mayor said, having a bunch of stuff and not knowing what to do with it doesn't necessarily make you a more effective community for delivering services. So what the kind of the approach I've taken when it comes to implementing technology is first to have a system that allows you to, what's the word I'm looking for? When you allow for plug and play of technology, so that multiple technologies can come together into one platform so it becomes actionable. And what I mean by actionable is there is no one solution that can do everything. But if you have a solution that allows for the best of breed technologies, whether it's a camera system, whether it's an IoT for a sensor for a parking, or a sensor for a light fixture, you don't want to have to force the local community to rip and replace in order for it to work together. So you need something that's going to be flexible and that's going to allow for those different technologies to come together. You also, with these technologies, also need something that allows for data analytics. Staff with government, staff with people, you're bringing a 1 + 1 = 3 type of solution to the table when it comes to smart cities. You can't expect everybody to be able to just bring all this technology together and just expect everybody to know all of a sudden become really smart with knowing what to do. So you need a solution that not only allows for plug and play, but also allows for the operator or the analyst or the government employee to be able to function with it. And you need the system to give them results without necessarily telling them what to do. So it's very important that not only can the system bring the different data sets together, but there needs to be some level of analytics to allow for the system to help the operator with what's going on. And then the other thing that I've seen with a lot of these data implementate with systems like this is workflow. While a lot of cities, a lot of especially small communities and even larger communities, they bring in a lot of technology, not for the idea of changing workflows, but the reality is when you bring a new technology in, whether it's a dashboard, whatever it is, even if it's just for issuing a violation permit, with the new technology, you need to update the workflow so that people understand how the data is coming in together, who's processing that information, and what's the expectation now that we're getting this data, what are we putting out? I bring that up, and with Scott dealing with a hurricane tomorrow, the expectation now with government leadership and with technology, the old excuse used to be is like, how could I have expected that to happen? The reality is that the whole community knows that it was going to happen. How could you not know how it was going to happen? So we got to get more involved. We have to get more in front of the curve. And because the technology is there to make us smarter, we can't be afraid of it. We have to embrace it and just learn how to work with it.
Thank you, Joe. I couldn't agree with you more. We definitely cannot be afraid of it, and we need to learn to embrace it. Just to build on what you're talking about as far as data analytics as well, and then tying that into what Mayor Grant was speaking about as far as accountability and transparency, and regardless of whether there are financial hard times, citizens still expect the services they need, and they expect accountability and transparency, as we mentioned. One of the my favorite use cases that we've implemented, and I've worked with both Joe and Mayor Grant as well, is our ability to understand the costs of emergencies, understand the costs of service requests, and sharing that with citizens. Mayor Grant, can you talk a little bit about that use case and how you've implemented that in Seat Pleasant?
So I want to give another example, and that is as it relates to properties in our city. We've had a vacancy problem in the city that created an enormous amount of problems in different areas. And Scott can probably attest to, when you have a bunch of vacant properties, you have people who are squatting, people who are conducting criminal activities out of these properties. You see devaluation of other people's properties occurring. It becomes that broken windows theory that you have to address, because if you don't address it, you're going to have a community overridden with criminal activity. And so we had to address this. So all of the data that was coming in, we noticed that we needed to do something about it, this vacancy. So we had over 140 some odd vacant properties in the city. And when we ran the analytics, we noticed that we were losing $1 million in revenue per year as a result of that. Now, if we didn't have a system like a Priority 5 to help us to aggregate that data and to really look at the data and see how it just doesn't impact just one area, but it impacts multiple areas, we would not have even realized that we were losing $1 million. So for a small community like a Seat Pleasant, every single dollar counts. And so how do we recapture those lost dollars? Those lost dollars were in several areas. One, that because of the devaluation of properties, obviously we were losing tax revenue in that area. Because the properties that were vacant, we weren't collecting taxes in that area. Because those vacant properties existed, it was putting undue strain on our police department and our public works department, because the police had to respond to calls. One vacant house was 30% of criminal activity in the entire city. One vacant house was the equivalent of 30% of our criminal activity in the city. And so that was costing us, obviously, money. We were dispatching police. Dispatching police costs money. That's not free. When a police officer shows up on the scene, that's costing you money. And so we have to understand that. The other thing is our public works had to repeatedly go back and board up the vacant property. That's costing taxpayer money. So when you look at all of that data, you'll recognize that you're losing, or we were losing, $1 million in revenue. So that helped us to drive public policy. So we created an affordable housing program. We put in $1.5 million of Seat Pleasant tax dollars. So we started buying the properties in the city. The city started buying them, rehabbing them, turning them into smart homes, and then putting them back out on the market. Now, we did not buy all of those houses. We went from 140 vacant houses down to 30 houses in about 18 months. Took us 18 months. Now, but we didn't buy all of it. We actually only bought 7 houses. But because the government started buying the houses, then others started realizing the value of our city, and they said, well, wait a minute, what about us? So they started coming in and buying some of those houses too. And so we went from 140 down to 30 some in about approximately 18 months. Now recapturing some of those dollars that we were losing annually because we were using a system like a Priority 5 to be able to bring all that data in, analyze that data, synthesize the data, and every department, so the police department was utilizing the data, the public works was utilizing the data. We were bringing in data from the Maryland Department of Assessments and Taxation. We were utilizing that data. And real estate people started coming in, getting access to the vacant housing list that we have. So they were utilizing the data. So everybody was utilizing data. So now property values have now what? Gone back up. So that makes the homeowner happy because they're not losing money in terms of the valuation of their property. We're happy because that's additional tax dollars that we're bringing in. We didn't raise taxes. We didn't have to raise taxes. We're just being good stewards of the tax dollars that we have and getting the revenue that we were supposed to be getting as a result of those vacant properties. So that is one use case in which we were utilizing that type of data to help drive decisions for the betterment of our community.
And I'd like to just quickly add on with that is part of what makes a smart city is that what the mayor just described is not about putting together a 6-month or 12-month report with the data frozen in time from a year ago and now making decisions based on that data, but it's how do I take that data and make it actionable so that as those vacant buildings are being sold or being bought, you can reevaluate, see your city, see what's going on in almost real time, and be making adjustments or trying to stay more focused with the here and the now and not always towards the future with what you're doing. And that's really where smart cities really starts to bring the data out from traditional studies and into operations for making good, timely decisions.
I couldn't agree with Joe more. And to his point, sometimes it takes 6 to 8 months for a study to be completed. And then by the time the study is published, the data is already old. And so that is a very good point that Joe is raising. I want people to make certain that they're paying attention to that. It's about real-time data. How are we able to utilize? Scott needs real-time data. He doesn't need data that's 6 months old. He's got a problem right now. He needs the current data. He needs access to current data, real-time data, to drive the decisions for his department in order to provide the services that are necessary for his community. So I could not agree with Joe more.
Correct. And Joe, I like to add, we use P5 similar with our port attendants, so we can manage and monitor companies like the oil fields kind of in a downtime right now. And we can actually monitor all facilities that have reduced services to where, or facilities that have shut down and relocated, or facilities that just closed down in general. So we use it similar to monitor our port activity because likely there's a big economic impact to our community as communities start shutting down or start reducing services. So that means that people, the unemployment rate is going up or people getting laid off from their jobs. So we can do an analysis on the company's activity throughout the port as well with the system. So that's how we monitor on our end as well.
Yeah, and that's a good point, Scott, because while the studies are important as it relates to like how does the port like refocus if there's going to be, you know, a slowdown in the deep water drilling out in the Gulf, how do we keep the port relevant? And while you need those studies to look out into the future as it relates to how do you refocus the port, a lot of that data that goes in to build that report, you need it now because you've got empty lots sitting at the port and you want to make sure as the port director, what am I doing everything I can to make sure that I've got tenants in there and that they're able to pay their bills? Because if there's a slowdown, what is there going to be their impact? How do we balance this? And you start to take a lot of different data from a lot of different silos of information. How do you bring it together so that you're making at least a semi-intelligent decision at that point? Because it's really hard, right? And you want to be looking to the future while at the same time dealing with the problems that are right there in front of you.
Correct.
Yes, thank you all for those great use cases. And what I love about those use cases, they're not conceptual. They're actual implementations that have led to real actual results in two different types of organizations. Just to wrap up, Mr. Cameraman, if you'd like to just talk a little bit more about maybe any of your other partner clients with Priority 5, and if there's any interesting use case you'd like to share from one of those organizations.
I appreciate it. I think the takeaway I have for this, part of it is with the city of Seat Pleasant and with Port Fourchon, to create a smart city. What we've done with our platform is in essence created an open architecture system so that it can fit into a lot of different silos of organizations. Because one smart city, whether it's, you know, Seat Pleasant with how to deal with vacancies, or the Port Fourchon with law enforcement and airport, even with the lights, the workflows on some level are the same thing. How do I take a lot of big data and make it actionable so my operator can do something with it? We've done this with obviously these two communities, but you know, places like Amtrak, the Secret Service for security, Amtrak for managing their trains and major train derailments, and even providing better care for veterans, you know, through the Veterans Affairs Administration. All these organizations have one similar thing in promise. How do I take a lot of data? How do I turn it into something that I can make actionable? And then how do I provide my services forward using technology as an aid and not as an anchor to slow me down because I'm trying to rifle through this process. And I think that's very important for a lot of smart cities, or even cities trying to get into smart cities. You need to balance long-term goals with short-term deliverables, and trying to make something so unique or so one-off doesn't always work. There's big data, how do I get it in and how do I process it? And I think that's kind of how I would like to leave this conversation on some level, is just the importance of having a workflow and maintaining operations is good stuff.
Thank you, Joe. And we have just a few minutes left here. So just for these last few minutes, I'll hand it over to Mayor Grant or Scott Bynum if you guys have any closing remarks you'd like to make. Otherwise, thank you all for joining.